Welcome to Life Matters. I'm Julie Plush along with my co-host Stephanie Alston.
Hi.
And today this is our Black History Special. We're going to not only tell you about African American history, but American history in African American neighborhoods. We're going to share some things that you never knew about. You may have heard about the places we're going to go today, but you might not have known exactly all the details, all the intricate histories and stories behind some of the places we're going to share today. We're going to go to 4 different places. We're going to take you on a little trip. We're first here at Fort Stanton in Southeast DC. We're going to go to Frederick Douglass House in Southeast. We're going to go to LaDroit Park in Northwest, and also
Meridian Hill
Park
yes.
in Northwest. So enjoy the trip. As I mentioned, we are here first at Fort Stanton Park, and we love Fort Stanton. This place is near and dear to both Stephanie and myself.
Childhood memories.
Childhood memories, I tell you. This is Fort Stanton, and it's a beautiful area in Southeast DC. A beautiful view, as you may have seen behind us, and it has a great history. First, our history is we attended Moulton Elementary School, which is right across the street. We had great times there. And also, Stephanie attended Our Lady Perpetual Help, which is right here on the property. And we had many a fun time.
Yes, we did.
At the Panorama Room. Crab feasts, cabarets. Yes, we had a ball here. So it was a wonderful time here. But Fort Stanton itself has its own special history that many people, even in this neighborhood, grew up here, did not know about.
Right.
So I want to share a little bit about that. Fort Stanton was a Civil War era fortification constructed in the hills above Anacostia in the District of Columbia, and was intended to prevent Confederate artillery from threatening the Washington Navy Yard. It also guarded the approach to the bridge that connected Anacostia, then known as Uniontown, with Washington. Built in 1861, the fort was expanded throughout the war and was joined by 2 subsidiary forts, Fort Ricketts and Fort Snyder. Following the surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia, it was dismantled and the land returned to its original owner. It never saw combat. Abandoned after the war, the site of the fort was planned to be part of a grand fort circle park system encircling the city of Washington. Though this system was never interconnected as it originally was implemented, the site of the fort is today a park maintained by the National Park Service, and a historical marker stands near the fort's original location. So enjoy Fort Stanton. We sure did as children. We also played the swimming pool at the recreation center just on the other side there, swung on the swings.
Yes.
And also, Stephanie and I had a ball playing several tennis matches, just the 2 of us, at the tennis court. And we really had a good time there. So come and know your history even in your own neighborhood. This is a beautiful place to be. If you were ever here, we also loved watching the fireworks on 4th of July here. Most people from this neighborhood and plenty of other neighborhoods around town will come to this hill and stand here. We could watch the fireworks at the monument.
I tell you, this is one of the grandest views you will ever see in Washington, D.C.
Ever.
You can see D.C., Virginia, parts of Maryland. I mean, it's fabulous.
It is a beautiful area. If I could have a house up here, I would absolutely love it and never go to work, because I would just love the view and watch it all day long. So come with us next to our next stop at Frederick Douglass Home. Well, welcome to our second stop on our National African American or American History Tour. We are now at the Frederick Douglass Home, and we just came out of a tour. We just came here to film, and we actually got to walk through the home. So this is a huge historic landmark in Washington, D.C. and Southeast D.C. It's a beautiful home, and Mr. Douglass had a beautiful life and a beautiful history. And so I'm going to share a little bit about him and the history of this home. The Frederick Douglass National Historical Site, administered by the National Park Service, is located at 1411 W Street Southeast in Anacostia, a neighborhood east of the Anacostia River in Southeast Washington, D.C. Established in 1988 as a National Historical Site, the site preserves the home and estate of Frederick Douglass, one of the most predominant African American of the 19th century. Douglass lived in this house, which he named Cedar Hill, from 1877 until his death in 1895. He called it Cedar Hill because of all the cedar trees around. It's perched high on a hilltop. The site also offers a sweeping view of the U.S. Capitol and the Washington, D.C. skyline. The site of the Frederick Douglass home was originally purchased by John Van Hook, 1855. Van Hook built the main portion of the present house soon after taking possession of the property. For a portion of the 1877, the house was owned by the Freedom Savings and Trust Company. Later that year, Douglass purchased it and eventually expanded its 14 rooms to 21, including two-story library and kitchen wing. The house has an L shape, and its plan is reminiscent of the design of Andrew Jackson in Downing. After Douglass's death, his widow Helen founded the Frederick Douglass Memorial and Historical Association in 1900. In 1916, the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs joined with the association. These groups owned the house until 1962, the year of my birth, yay, when the federal government took the deed of the house through the National Park Service with the intent of restoring and preserving it. Also on site are an interpretive visitor center and Douglass's growling, a small stone building in which he secluded himself while writing and studying. Walking through this home is truly walking through history, and we definitely invite everyone in this area in particular to come and walk through the home. You can come here. I think they do tours every day, and the National Visitor Center is open every day, I think from 9 until 5 and some days 9 until 3, except for holidays. And it's a wonderful film that they show at the Visitor Center and really tells you his history and the history of this area and the history of Frederick Douglass and all that he did. He actually walked to work at the Capitol from his home when he was a U.S. Marshal. He was also the recorder of deeds for Washington, D.C. And he lived here with his first wife for 5 years before her death, and then lived here with his second wife until his death in 1895. He was 77 years old, but he was speaking almost every day, 5 to 6 times a day. I couldn't do it, and he would earn maybe like $200 per speech, and it was amazing. He had an amazing life. He was definitely fit man. To walk up the stairs of this home, you have to be fit. So we invite everyone to come out and see the Frederick Douglass home and just peer inside a type of history.
Well, here we are now. We're over in Northwest D.C. We just took you from Frederick Douglass home and Stanton Park in Southeast. So now we're over here in Northeast D.C. at LaDroit Park, established in 1873, which is not far from Howard University, is around the corner. And as you can hear, a lot of street noise. We're actually looking over at the Howard Theater, where it was the center of entertainment for African Americans back in the early part of the century, and it's being refurbished. We don't know when that's going to be complete,
we
but
hope so soon.
Absolutely,
we'd love to go back in there.
Absolutely, I've never been in there. Have you been in there?
No.
Julie, you don't look that old.
No.
Okay, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, we want to take you on a tour to this historical part of the city as well. And a lot of people may not know about this part of the city, but this city has a very rich culture, had a lot of African Americans who were professionals that live here. Anna Julia Cooper, who some of you may or may not have heard of. And we're going to take you on a tour and show you some of the beauty, the history, and the culture of LaDroit Park. So LaDroit Park is a neighborhood in Washington, D.C. located immediately southeast of Howard University. Its borders include W Street to the north, Rhode Island Avenue, and Florida Avenue to the south, 2nd Street Northwest to the east, and Georgia Avenue to the west. The neighborhood was developed by Amzi Barber, who was on the Board of Trustees at Howard University in the 1870s. LaDroit Park was one of the first suburbs of Washington. Many of the area's Victorian mansions, houses, and row houses were designed by architect James McGill. LaDroit Park was developed and marketed as a romantic neighborhood with narrow tree-lined streets that bore the same names as the trees that shaded them. Originally, the neighborhood did not follow the scheme of the street names used in the rest of Washington, D.C. Extensive focus was placed on the landscaping of the neighborhood, as developers spent a large sum of money to plant flower beds and trees to attract high-profile professionals from the city. LaDroit Park was even gated with guards to promote security for its hopeful residents. Originally, LaDroit Park was a whites-only neighborhood. Efforts by many led to the area becoming integrated, especially multiple actions by students from Howard University. In July of 1888, the students tore down the fences that separated the neighborhood in protest of its discriminating policies. By the 1940s, LaDroit Park became a major focal point for the African American elite, as many prominent figures resided there. Griffith Stadium also was located here until 1965, when the Howard University Hospital was built where it used to stand. LaDroit Park includes Anna J. Cooper Circle, which I mentioned earlier. Her name is Anna Julia Haywood Cooper, and it was named after her because she was a prominent education pioneer. She was also the principal of what used to be called the Washington Colored High School, also known as the M Street School, which later became known as the Paul Laurence Dunbar High School.
Amazing. And she had a rich history along with this neighborhood.
Yes, she did.
And I'd never heard of her, and I'm sure some of you have not heard of her either. So we would ask you to look her up. But I know Stephanie did a lot of research and could share a couple of things about her.
Actually, she was a well-educated woman. She actually she got her undergraduate degree from Oberlin College, and she also studied at Wilberforce University, and she even studied at the Sorbonne. And her house is actually located here in LaDroit Park, and she also took in students and educated them in her house, where she took residence up on the second floor, and now her house is being refurbished and is being bought by private owners, and I think that's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we definitely invite you to come out to LaDroit Park. A lot of people just ride past here going to Howard University and going to the Howard University Hospital or any other cultural places around here, but stop and just really take in the history and look at the architecture. So many homes are beautiful.
Yes.
And come check out LaDroit Park when you get a chance.
Yes.
And next we're going to Meridian Hill, also known as Malcolm X Park. So come and join us. We're going to walk all the way.
Exactly. Right. We're now standing in Meridian Hill Park, unofficially known as Malcolm X Park. And as you can see, this park has many levels. It's nestled here in the heart of Northwest DC. It's right up the road from the White House. U Street, the entertainment quarter, is down a few blocks. So there's a lot of rich history that surrounds this park as well. And to be very honest with you, I think this is the first time I've ever stood in this park.
Me too, and I'm sure that a lot of times this is the first time you've ever actually seen it, inside, or maybe driven past it, which I've done quite often. But just to see this beautiful architecture and see that in the summertime you would see fountains and all the water flowing is just beautiful. It's beautiful, you can tell.
Let me give you a little history of Meridian Hill Park. This 12 acres of landscape grounds are maintained by the National Park Service as part of Rock Creek Park, but are not contiguous with the main part of that park. Meridian Hill Park is bordered by 15th, 16th, W, and Euclid Streets Northwest. In 1819, John Porter erected a mansion on the grounds and called it Meridian Hill because it was located on the White House Meridian. So I imagine that before all these buildings were built, you could just look down the street from this park and see the White House. During the 19th century, the environs of Meridian Hill became host to Columbian College, later renamed George Washington University, which happens to be my alma mater. Columbia Road was named for the college and formed the northern boundary of the original campus. Prior to the Civil War, the mansion grounds became a pleasure park for the area. During the war, Union troops encamped there in Camp Cameron on Georgetown Heights. In 1883, the writer Joaquin Miller built a cabin in Meridian Hill Park. The cabin is now located in Rock Creek Park. Much of the impetus for creating a public park on this portion of 16th Street came from Mary Foote Henderson, who was the wife of Missouri Senator John Brooks Henderson, a local resident. She lobbied Congress with several plans for the neighborhood before getting approval for the park, including supporting a plan by architect Franklin W. Smith to construct a colossal presidential mansion on Meridian Hill to replace the White House. And there's actually a statue of President Buchanan located in this park. The land was originally part of the Columbian College grounds. In 1910, after the school moved to its current location in Foggy Bottom, the federal government bought the land. And in 1914, the Interior Department hired landscape architect George Burnop to design a grand urban park modeled on parks found in European capitals. His plans, later modified by Horace Peasley, included an Italian Renaissance-style terrace fountain in the lower half and gardens in the French Baroque style in the upper half. And you can obviously see that influence right here in this park. Look at this. This looks like something right out of Tuscany. The walls and the fountains were built with concrete aggregate, which was a new building material consisting of concrete mixed with small pebbles. After 2 decades under construction, the grounds were given park status in 1936 and have been designated a National Historic Landmark. In the 1970s and 80s, crime became widespread in the surrounding neighborhood. Meridian Hill Park became a haven for drug dealing and was considered unsafe, especially at night. After the murder of a local teenager near the park in 1990, a group of citizens formed Friends of Meridian Hill Park, and they organized volunteer nighttime patrols and lobbied in the National Park Service to make improvements to the park. On Sunday afternoons during the warm weather months, people gather from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. in the upper park to dance, participate in drum circle, and provide food for the homeless. And I know I've driven by here several times and I've seen the homeless trucks out here helping to pass out food, and I think that's great. The activity has been held in the park since the 1950s and attracts professional drummers from time to time. It was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1994. Take a look at the Grand Meridian Hill Park.
William Sidney Pickman, black architect, was born in Alabama on April 21, 1875. He attended Tuskegee Institute, where he completed programs in woodwork and architectural mechanical drawings in 1897. He then entered Drexel Institute in Philadelphia, where he completed the architecture and mechanical drawings program in 1900. From late 1900 to 1905, Pittman worked at Tuskegee Institute as head of the Department of Architectural Drawing. He was responsible for overseeing all campus construction. In late 1903, he left Tuskegee to establish a private practice in Washington, D.C. Between 1905 and 1909, he designed public schools, college facilities, and hotels, and gained recognition as one of the most accomplished black architects in America. During this period, he was commissioned to prepare, design, and construction documents for the Negro Building at the Jamestown Exhibition, the World's Fair held in Virginia in 1907. Pittman was also involved in community development in Fairmount Heights, Maryland, where he lived. He organized and was elected president of the Fairmont Heights Improvement Company, an investment organization geared towards fostering an alternative to the inner city ghetto. He was president of the Heights Citizens Committee and the Washington chapter of the Negro Business League, for which he edited the Negro Business League Herald. In 1907, Pittman married Portia Washington, daughter of Booker T. Washington, who was the founder and principal of Tuskegee Institute. In 1913, the Pittmans moved to Dallas, Texas, where they raised 2 sons and a daughter. Between 1911 and 1927, they resided at 3 different addresses. At each, Pittman operated his architectural practice from his home. He was the first practicing black architect in Texas. During his 16-year practice in Dallas, he designed at least 7 major projects in the city, as well as projects in Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and Waxahachie. 5 of his known structures still stood in 1990. The colored Carnegie Library of Houston, which was built in 1913, was torn down in 1962 to yield to a freeway. The Allen Chapel AME Church, which was built in 1914, still stands in Fort Worth, Texas. The United Brothers of Friendship Hall of San Antonio, which was built in 1915, was also demolished in the path of an expressway. Joshua Chapel AME Church was dedicated in 1917. The Grand Temple, which was built in 1915, of the State Grand Lodge, Knight of Pius, a black fraternal organization, still stands in Dallas, though the 5-story structure is no longer owned by the Piusans. The St. James AME Church was built in 1919 and still stands in Dallas within view of the old Knights of Pius headquarters. The building was sold and remodeled as office space in 1984. In Houston, the 5-story Grand United Order of Oddfellows Lodge building was constructed from Pittman's plan in 1924. It was raised in 1982 to make way for parking and annex space for the Alley Theater. The Wesley Chapel AME Church was built in 1926. The original building still stands southeast of downtown Houston. The colored Carnegie Library of Houston and the Knight of Pius Temple of Dallas were acclaimed across the United States in newspapers and magazines. The library was the first one for blacks in Houston. The Piathan Temple was almost totally financed by the black citizens of Dallas. Both structures were presented as examples for other African Americans to emulate. They were benchmarks for Texas and the United States. In 1925, Pittman became president of the Brotherhood of Negro Building Mechanics in Texas. In 1928, he and his wife separated, and he ceased to practice as an architect. She returned to Tuskegee and worked as a teacher. During the 1930s and 1940s, Pittman earned a living as a carpenter and published a weekly newspaper, The Brotherhood Eyes. He used the paper to vent his criticisms of the black community. A firm believer in supporting black businesses, Pittman charged the black middle class with hypocrisy for patronizing white businesses instead of black ones. He also criticized black ministers for their lax morals. The black preachers Pittman attacked for filling their coffers while ignoring the homeless and hungry are dead, as are most of the people who brought the paper faithfully to read. Pittman's attempt to, as he put it, clean the race of crooked leaders and expose the unfit and misfit within the race. Above the masthead of every issue was the paper slogan in red letters: a newspaper that doesn't cross the color line. A box on page 1 described the newspaper's purpose. BE is after the evildoer within the race. It plays no favorites and recognizes no sex. It works through the eyes. As a result of his publications, Pittman was charged with libel in 1936, but he was acquitted. He died in Dallas on March 14, 1958, and was buried in the Glen Oak Cemetery in South Dallas. Because he practiced in Texas longer than any other state, the state should have more examples of his work than any other region of the United States. The majority of his structures have not been identified, however, and may never be identified because public records of them are lacking and Pittman's personal records have not been located. Did you know that he designed a landmark in a section of Washington, D.C. known as Deanwood? Many of our great black leaders once lived in this northeast neighborhood. Carter G. Woodson, Booker T. Washington, Chancellor William, just to name a few. This was one of the only locations of the city that Negroes could build and own their own houses. Now here is a little history about this chess house. For a gentleman of Pittman's renowned reputation to be the designer of this building, it was special because most people in Deanwood at the time built their own homes. They could not afford to pay a designer, especially the likes of Pittman's caliber. At that time, it wasn't a chess house, but it was a zoned commercial building and residential because Sheriff Road was a very busy street at the time. He never did reside at this dwelling, according to the records. The fireplaces are the original, along with the hardwood floors. Some of Pittman's designs also include Garfield Elementary School, the 12th Street Colored Young Men's Christian Association, which is now the Thurgood Marshall Center for Service and Heritage, and the Zion Baptist Church. Zion Baptist Church, this quaint frame building, has served several church congregations since its construction in 1908. The first Zion Church stayed for more than 60 years. Since 1993, members of Joshua Temple Firstborn Church have worshiped within its walls. Pittman designed the building to the right of the church, which is the home of the Deanwood Chess House, which is a branch of the Big Chair Chess Club since 1991. The club uses chess to teach children and adults that their decisions in life, as on the game board, have consequences. This is why history points a finger to preserve this building and its history. This is a trip you can add to your Black History tour list and bring your children. Visiting hours at the Deanwood Chess House are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. and on Saturdays from 12 noon to 8 p.m. For further information or to confirm the hours, please call area code 202-396-1780. That's 202-396-1780.
Enjoyed our African American history in the African American community in Washington, D.C. today. We really had a good time traveling. Yes, traveling all over, walking up a lot of hills, walking up the 85 steps of the Douglas home, walking up the hill of Fort Stanton, walking up the hill of Meridian Hill Park. It's a beautiful area of Washington. I love the hills because we have a beautiful view here, and I love Washington, and I hope you do too. So this was just a snippet. We only showed you 4 places in Washington, but there's so many others. But we just want to give you a little taste of what is here in Washington. If you live here or right outside of Washington, what you could see and what you could do.
Absolutely.
Fun things, historical things, and you know about the White House and you know about the Capitol, but there are other little nuggets of history right here that you can take advantage of and learn and instruct your children on as well. So we hope you enjoyed it. We sure did. And so if you want to write us any more information about what we saw today, just email us at lifematterswith2s's@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time on a warmer day. But I hope you had a good time, and thanks for joining.